Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. In fact, a knives video. We have a couple of knives here from Damn Designs. These are visiting from my local fellow knife enthusiast, Steve. You can give him a follow on Instagram at Daily Pocket Dumps. I will link that down in the description. If I forget, please someone let me know in the comments. I have a bad habit of not putting stuff in the description that I say that I will. Let me get these boxes out of the way and show you the knives that we have to take a look at today. The first one is the Brahma, and the second one is the Anzo XL. For XL knife, it kind of makes sense because it's kind of stocky and big, but it's also still a pretty short knife. Okay, so we'll come back to that. First off, let me give you a rundown on this guy right here. This is the Brahma. It is 8 inches overall, so a pretty full-sized knife. 3 5/16 on the blade length. So that's a little shorter. Let me move this out of the way just because I don't want the camera to try and fight me. So 3 5/16 on the blade length, so a little short for the overall size of the knife, but not too terrible. The closed size is 4 11/16, so that's what you're going to have in your pocket. 3 7/8 grip area, as you can see. Yeah, quite a bit of real estate here on the handle. My size large hands fit pretty comfortably. 4.9 ounces, so that is the one notable stat here. This is a pretty heavy knife, and you can see those full nested liners are what contribute to that, along with the rather stocky blade. Okay, so this is about 5/16 thick, so a good 16th of an inch over, or sorry, 5/32 thick, so a good solid 32nd over an eighth of an inch. So that's pretty thick, stocky blade steel for this knife. And that's one of the things that I really like about it. For EDC knives, I like that heavy, stocky blade because there's a lot of times where, I'm doing something that I probably shouldn't be doing with my EDC knife. And I like the extra confidence that that delivers. I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole before I quickly come back and just give you a rundown on the Anzo XL. The specs on this guy are 7 3/8 overall. So fairly short little knife, but quite fat, as you can see. 3-inch blade on this. 4 5/8 closed. Now, one of the things that makes this so long when it's closed, if you only measure to here, it's not that bad. It's closer to, as you can imagine, 4 inches. But you can see the front flipper does really jut out there rather prominently, which adds a good bit to that length. Now, having said that, that front flipper is very easy to access and rather comfortable. And I have to say, kind of enjoyable, even though normally I'm not a big front flipper guy. This is reverse flickable as well. And I should have mentioned, I guess we're not quite to that point on the Brahma yet, but I have to say before we put this back down, the jimping on this is this big, heavy, aggressive jimping that really grabs your thumb and makes it, kind of easy, and you don't have to think about it a whole lot to get it to snap out of that handle pretty quickly and easily. All right. Weight on this guy is 4.6 ounces, so still kind of heavy, but you can see through that JG10 that it is pretty heavily milled out there to cut back on some of that weight. Like the Brahma we mentioned before, nicely nested liners, which is a really good touch there. G10 backspacer. Let's come back to the blade before we switch gears again. So we've got this nice blade. In fact, both of these blades are pretty enjoyable for me. Both are 14C20, 14C28N. This guy is nice and thin. It's actually a little under an eighth of an inch thick. So that thin, super long flat grind makes this a very slicey blade. Both of these are pretty thin behind the edge. However, as you can imagine, the Anzo is going to slice a little bit better. The extra thick blade is going to make this not quite as slicey, but performance-wise, it still does really well. I did do a little bit of cutting with this, and I have to say I was pretty impressed with it. Now, as we're talking about this blade, Both of these have done a nice job with the sharpening choil. Both of these have a gorgeous stone wash on them. And I have to say that, Dam Designs typically, and this is going to be sort of the theme of this video, they tend to do a really nice job of design. Both of these blades are a little bit different than what I'm used to seeing. They're sort of a refreshing change from sort of the same old, same old. It kind of makes one of the things that I think Dam Designs really does is it makes that, I don't know, the sea of, G10 bearing knives out there. I mean, they are part of that whole gamut, but they are different enough, and they're doing a couple things consistently that just make them stand out from the crowd. And they're not charging that much more. I think both of these are around $60 in the US, which, your standard Civivi or CGRB or something like that might be like 55 or $50. So it's not that out of line. You're paying a little extra, but it's a very little extra. And I think they're delivering some really nice touches. We've got this great decorative pivot that they always have. We've got these nicely nested liners. Fit and finish is really, really on point. With the Anzo here, we've got a reversible clip. Now, both of these are bent over clips. All right. I do like the fact that on the Brahma they went with flush screws. That's a little bit preferable to the not so flush screws here. Although, if you turn the knife fully sideways, you can see that even though they're not flush to the actual steel, they're basically flush with the handle. So that is, that kind of works. All right. But the other thing I'll notice here is for those of you who are lefties, it comes with this, you know, this recessed spot on the show side as well, with this nice little filler tab. And those are the kind of little touches that the pivot, the nested liners, the consistently good action, the design, the fantastic stonewash. And it's always a really, these have this really great heavy stonewash that gives the knives, that extra bit of depth and detail. You can tell some attention is being paid. And so I have to say, I really, really appreciate that in general about these knives. Now, let's go back to sort of noticing the Brahma for a second. We have, again, the typical Dam Design step down sort of pattern of contouring for the handles. It does make the handle feel really, really nice in hand. Hammer grip works well, saber grip. The jimping here is good. It's not super sharp, but it's definitely functional. Reverse grip, it's not quite as good. It narrows just a little bit too much to be great in a reverse grip, but whoever holds a knife this way anyway. The clip is not a hot spot, at least in hammer or saber grip. I don't really have an issue with it. The liner is very accessible, which to me is always a big thing on liner locks, especially these days. I don't know why I seem to have gotten a few recently where it's really hard to access this liner, but yeah, it works really, really well. The action, of course, is smooth. The detent, and both of these, I have to say, and this is again pretty consistent for Dam Designs. The detent is so snappy. Both of these are really, really enjoyable. They're smooth. Okay, the bearings are nice, and they're running really, really well, as you can see, nice and drop shut. But the detent is dialed so well, and I have to say, the Anzo here stands out along those lines because with a front flipper, often, the detent is softened down quite a bit so that, it's a little more comfortable. They've solved that problem with a larger tab here, and that very aggressive jimping. So boom, that just flies out. Really, really, I've got to say, really enjoyable, really fidgety knife. Now, while we're talking about the Anzo, I have to say it's a little small for me. My hand is definitely kind of cramped here, and I just, I can't get a hold of it in a way that feels really, really comfortable to me. It's not that there are any hot spots. It's just like I don't feel like I've got enough real estate for my hand. And the way this is sort of built is it kind of tends to want to push you back. Like I feel like my pinky is always wanting to fall off the back of the handle here. Now it's a smaller knife, and so we've kind of already talked about that. It has less Uh, it has less grip area, only like 3¼ inches. And the landing area here for your pinky is not as big. Obviously, this is much more comfortable, at least for me. You know, if you got smaller hands, either one of these is probably fine. But that is often the thing that pushes me away from the smaller knives. Now, I did do a little bit of cutting with this, and of course, 80% of your sort of grip and effort is coming from these three fingers and your thumb here on the spine. So when I did a little bit of cutting with this, it worked perfectly fine. So I'm being a little unfair, but my thought is, over time that would bother me a bit, that I just don't feel like I have enough real estate with the Anzu XL. We've talked about a number of the sort of typical dam design features, and so let's go ahead and get back to some comparisons. And that's where I think, these guys really, really shine. When you start comparing them to some of the other budget brands out there. So here is my Real Steel H6. Phenomenal knife. One of my favorite budget folders that's out there. But the dam design is just a little more enjoyable. The design is much more striking. The action is very enjoyable, very fidgety. I know it's bearings versus washers, and that's probably part of the story. But I think you can see, this is just um, a little more built for those who appreciate some attention to design, and to make something that really looks cool as well as functions. Now, the H6 looks fine and it functions phenomenally well. Okay, and it is a little bit cheaper. So we've got to give credit where credit is due. Let me throw in, I'm going to try, here's a knife. That is similar materials and in fact costs quite a bit more. And I brought this, this is the Bag Knives Astio, and I brought this in specifically to show, yeah, you can, to get a really interesting and dramatic design, end up paying quite a bit. And of course, Bag Knives, you're paying a lot for the name there as well. I wish this was in 14C28N rather than the D2 that it is in. Not the end of the world, but it's just one of those things. So I wanted to throw this in as a comparison, because this is definitely a knife that puts design up front. These, dam designs in general tend to do the same. They really flex those muscles in terms of, this looks really, really cool. And I have to say, they do. I'll throw another comparison in here. Where did I put my Route 1? Maybe I will. Yeah, here we go. So here's a Route 1. Again, a great knife, going to perform similarly to these. Of course, it's going to have washers instead of bearings, which is going to be a big difference. But nonetheless, not nearly as striking looks-wise as the dam designs. All right. I don't have a lot of Civivis around right now, but I'll throw in one. This is the Cubit, just more similar in size to the Anzu XL. And you can see the Cubit is actually not bad. Like, it's kind of interesting and unique, which makes it hang with these guys pretty well. But you all know as well as I do that there's just a sea of liner locks out there, and most of them are not going to be quite as compelling as these. Let's throw in one other company that I do think is doing some impressive stuff these days. Kaiser has some great knives out there. The Kaiser Escort is fantastic with the clutch lock. It's got to be the best EDC on the market right now. They've got some great button locks. In addition to this version of the bag letter, there are a few other versions, and Kaiser's kind of killing it. Got to give them credit for sure. But even then, and Dam Designs is using an overseas OEM. We kind of know that to be the case. And even then, Dam Designs is offering something a little bit unique, and you're not paying a whole huge big jump in premium for that. Now, I think if you go on the website, and even some retailers will have some of these in S35VN, you'll pay a little more for the S35VN versions of these knives. And I'm not promising these are definitely available in that, but I know some Dam Designs knives are. So I haven't, my overall take on this company is, they have a lot of compelling models that look really cool, that look really attractive, and by all accounts, I've handled. I'm trying to think back. I've only had one myself. I've handled these two, obviously, as well as a couple of more. I've also tried to, you know, go out of my way to look around and check forums and stuff like that. Overall, the quality seems to be pretty darn consistent, and the option for all of them with the 14C28N seems to be a very good value proposition to me. So you end up getting a whole lot in terms of performance, in terms of looks, in terms of having something different and unique that not everyone is going to have, well, still being fairly affordable. And I do want to say, um, both of these knives kind of fit that mold, but the Anzo XL probably does so just a little bit more. Like it's a pretty dramatic looking blade with all that full belly up front. It's a little bit of a different shape than people are used to, and so I have to say, from that perspective, from a design perspective, and from having something different and cool and unique that doesn't cost a huge sum of money. This is a really, really great knife. Now you're going to have to, it's going to be even greater for people who have smaller hands than I do. But if you have really big hands, it might be a little bit of a hiccup for you. Anyway, both of these are very, very enjoyable knives. I've been really fortunate to be able to spend some time with them, carry them, use them just a little bit. I try to take it easy when I've got somebody else's knives. I don't want to cause any problems. So I'm pretty careful about what I do, but I have enjoyed being able to use these and become familiar with them over the last little while. So big thanks again to Steve. Thanks all of you for watching. Don't forget to check those channel sponsors. It is a huge, huge help. If you're in the US, please follow those links and buy some folders, White Mountain Knives, Blade Ops. Um, that's a huge help to the channel, but at the same time, and I know in Canada we're having some issues with folders right now, so if that's your case, maybe buy a fixed blade. If you're gonna, and look, I say this all the time, only do that if you're gonna buy a knife anyway, right? If you're like, oh, I'm shopping for knives, then it makes sense to use my link, or use my discount code. You save a little bit, I get a little bit of benefit, and so we all kind of win. All right, back to these knives. Like I've said before about the other dam design that I had, and about others that I've seen, they tend to do a good job. Pretty enjoyable. Not all of them are going to be for everybody. The last thing that I haven't mentioned, and I feel like this is a good way to close, is that Dam Designs. It's what's cool about it is they have a bunch of different models, but you can always tell what it is, even though these knives are very different, but somehow they still have that same sort of flavor to them that lets us know that these are Dam Designs knives. So I really, really appreciate their ability to do that, and they're really killing it on that front, as well as quality and utility. So there you go, guys. That's my take on these two Dam Designs knives. I'll probably have more on the channel. I do really enjoy them. Thanks a lot for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments section. We will talk to you soon.